The future of electronics factory automation. It's a dynamic space at the moment, and the industry is pursuing a standard to help level the playing field. But in the meantime, some of the major companies, such as Panasonic, Yamaha, ASM, are pursuing their own initiatives. Jason Spera is heading up the Connected Software Initiative on behalf of IPC, and he joins me today along with Michael Ford from Mentor Graphics. Welcome, gentlemen. Good to see you. So let's try and fill out some of the background to this. Jason, what's the current position regarding the proposed IPC standard for factory communications?
Well, as you might remember, Trevor, at Apex, we got together about 22 of the major machine sensor and software vendors to discuss the topic. After that time, we actually, the IPC spawned a new committee, a 2-17 committee that we're now calling the Connected Factory Initiative. That's the effort to build a standard for the industry for factory communications. We also had a meeting in Chicago a couple months afterwards where we had very good attendance, and we built out the structure of the way forward to develop the standard. As a result of the meeting, both in Chicago and at Apex, it was believed that to expedite standard development under the IPC, we could gain value from a protocol that was developed by a third party and build upon that. At the SMTA show, we discovered that that was not to happen. Of course, we thought that would be a bit of a setback in terms of time to market for the ultimate standard, but as it turned out, another opportunity presented itself at the show. A Tier 1 manufacturer that has actually been engaged in an effort with their very large ecosystem of machine vendors and sensor vendors had actually been doing a great deal of work on factory communication in a normalized manner. And they have indicated that they will donate what they've done in partnership, hopefully, with most of their machine vendors in their ecosystem to the IPC effort. So we actually now are in a good place to getting something to the industry as quickly as possible. But beyond that, in more clerical issues, we have the Connected Factory Initiative as the name of the effort. We have the protocol that will result from this will be called the CFX standard, or the Connected Factory Exchange Data is what it stands for. We also have a task group had developed a survey that's now circulating within the committee and will go to the wider IPC shortly that turned out to actually be quite good. It forms boundaries of what this standard will and will not contain and what it will do. It's actually a really good piece of work that's moving around right now, and I believe, and Michael would know as well, I think actually very shortly it's going to go through a final approval before it goes to the IPC in a wider way.
Right, so, okay. Well, there's quite a lot of information there, so let's try and unpack a little bit of it there. Michael, how does this play in with what you were talking about earlier with Mentor, first of all, if I can ask that question?
Sure. We are obviously very happy to be part of this initiative, and you know, the greatest thing of all is to see all of these different companies, as Jason outlined, coming together within a team now to create this this standard. Because you know, for so many years we've all been trying to play different games, having difficulties to talk to machines, having difficulties to create value, and you know, at the end it's the customer that suffers. It's the customer that doesn't get the opportunity to do what they want with the data. So sitting around in the meeting with the IPC to see all of these people now wanting to participate, wanting to contribute, wanting all of us together, competitors, everybody in the same place with the same idea, this is going forward. And this is a great advantage for the industry. So whether we have many standards, maybe OML, which is already currently out there, we already have examples of people using it, that will coexist alongside the IPC standard. We're all going in the right direction. And I think it offers a choice, it offers a flexibility for people to be able to choose what they like to take themselves forward into this 21st century, which, you know, otherwise just wouldn't have happened.
Okay, yeah, I think it's a very important move forward. So, Jason, if I understand you correctly, this Tier 1 CEM is making their software available on an open source basis. They're going to let donate the license, as it were, to IPC. So it'll act as a platform, a basic platform on which to develop this standard. Who's going to develop it? Who's going to maintain it going forward?
Well, if I may, it's not so much that they're donating any licenses to anything. It's not a product per se. The mandate of the committee is to develop a data standard and a transport recommendation, meaning what the data content will be coming from a given machine, sensor, or classification of device, and how will that be emitted from the machine or sensor. So in terms of actual software, they're not donating any of that. It's merely I shouldn't say merely because it is important, it's the data that they aggregated from all their machine vendors. So that alone can inform the final structure of the standard that the IPC will put forward. And further, the machine vendors have already done all this, so it actually exists, which is a huge leg up on the way to having something to the market as a standard that's viable.
Okay, so it's basically facilitating the data coming from one machine and to the other. It's not dictating any of the instructions. It's just it's acting as a facilitator.
Well, and this is actually a common confusion that happens even in the committee meetings sometimes, and Michael, I think, can attest to this, is that there is the issue of transport, which is how you move the data around. That is a software issue. Then there's data content, is what does the data contain? And they're two very separate things, but they're related and both are important. The data content is primarily what we are building upon from what the ecosystem of these vendors and the manufacturer has done. And then, of course, the survey I mentioned is it covers both of those issues as to what the industry considers important, most important versus not, and so forth, so that the standard, our desire out of the gate is as comprehensive as possible, but doesn't have a lot of extraneous things that nobody is really interested in for time to market reasons.
Right, okay. So let's widen the debate a little bit and say, well, we have some existing vendors in the market, pick-and-place companies, for example, who have their own software solutions. How is this going to play into somebody like ASM or somebody like Panasonic or people like that? Are they going to be able to plug into this seamlessly, or how is that going to work?
Well, sure.
Okay, I mean, who wants to pick that up? Do you want to pick that up, Michael?
Sure, I'll start. Yeah, I think we've seen in the past machine vendors basically having to create their own, which they create and use information for different tasks. And they come up with things like line solutions, reading data from inspection machines and going back and modifying SMT machine behavior. And this has kind of proven things. Things have been going on for a long time. The problem is that they've been happening in a proprietary environment. So within this new standard, okay, you could say that we're bringing the data out from all of these machines such that anybody could come along and create whatever solutions they like. They may be line-level solutions, machine-level solutions, or site-level, enterprise-level. All of these different things are allowed. But also there's a flip side to that, in that the information is also available back to the machine vendors from other processes, from other lines, from things like materials and work orders. So this is a two-way street, and it really enables a lot of new ideas to be taken forward at all of the different levels, giving machine vendors empowerment to develop additional solutions, whereas we can also then provide solutions on the site level from people like Jason and ourselves. So, this is really just opening up the whole opportunity. And the data availability, which does plug and play into all of these machines and systems, is really there to enable all of this to happen. We're not controlling what people will do with the data. We're simply giving them the opportunity to go away and think of some great ideas to help manufacturing go forward.
So this is extending beyond just the line software. This is going to go to a wider enterprise software in the factory?
Yeah, potentially it can go to all of those different levels, because once you have the information and you're propagating it up to MES or ERP levels, or let's say computerized solutions like Industry 4.0 or smart factories, yeah, you've got the information. That's the tools that you need to create the kind of solutions that people need.
Okay. So Jason, coming back to the question we had way back at Apex, do we have a better view on the timeline when we can expect to see something actually that's going to be usable or workable introduced to the market?
At Apex and the SMTA show, I said that you would have to speak to the IPC leadership, but I can tell you that our target is that actually at Apex something of tangible value is announced at that time. That's one of the targets we have internally now.
So Michael, I mean, this is more than just a line-level software integration. It goes further up. Can you explain to our viewers a little bit deeper how this is going to work?
Traditionally, for example, you can go to a machine on the shop floor, take out a report, and 80% of the data you get is going to be almost meaningless because the machine only knows what it's doing from its own perspective. But this new standard enables machines that are different, different types from different, kinds of information, a screen printer, reflow oven, SMT machine, to start to talk the same language. Then you can start to put pieces of information together so that you can communicate from one machine on the line to another machine on the line. Each machine has an understanding of what the line's doing. Are we doing a changeover? Do we have a bottleneck? Is another machine down? And so we've got good reporting for that whole line. But then from a planning perspective, it may be that what's made on this line, for example, may impact on another line. So we take that same data that we're sharing between the machines into, for example, a planning engine. And therefore we can start to have a look at what the potential consequences are going to be if that line stays down for a significant amount of time. That may also impact the way that materials are delivered. We would like to make a stop on that for the time being. Maybe we'd like to reschedule and move materials around to do production of a different product somewhere else. So immediately, all of the different functions that we see in the factory are all getting the same picture of the same thing at the same time. People aren't arguing anymore or bringing, making horrific meetings where people are discussing what on earth do we do to save the situation. Everybody now is plugged into the same source of data. And this is what the standard's about.
Yeah, I think that's very important, Jason. A lot of the pick and place machines, for example, are always looking to see what inventory they need to bring to the line so they make the maximum uptime. And even going beyond that, in some factories, they want to see where the suppliers are providing just-in-time materials to the factory. So this is all going to play in together.
It is. Well, the standard that we're talking about is a bit of an enabler to that, because in that description you just gave, you were encompassing extra corporate data sets going into the supply chain, ERP, the host system, which would typically be the MES or MOS system in the factory, and then all the assets and the devices. So it's a huge, to get everything that you just discussed to happen, spans from the warehouse out to the loading dock and through ERP and into the business. So it's the data that underpins all that has traditionally been handled by armies of IT people trying to customize things. And with a standard for the data exchanges that underpins all the analytics involved in what you described, simplifies that immensely. And I really think that's one of the core goals of this. And in fact, in the charter for the IPC effort, it's specific that we are not to tell a customer in the standard what to do with the data, analyzing it, or make logic decisions upon it. This is an enabling data stream that underpins anything the customer wants to do in the factory, but not telling them what to do with the data.
Right, okay. Well, it certainly sounds a very exciting project. Obviously, there's an element of constant updating needed, constant development needed, and this is going to be undertaken by a team, I believe, on the committee. Is that how it's going to work, or is it going? Because the issue we had before, of course, with the previous IPC CAMEX was the fact that it was developed and then not really supported after that. So do you have a plan for keeping this monitored and up to date?
Michael likely remembers there was a spirited discussion in Chicago at one of the IPC meetings about that very subject. And the evolution of the standard is particularly important to the machine vendors, because the machine vendors are typically the first that intercept the demand from a customer that I need that data augmented from that machine, and I'm not going to wait 12 months for a committee to say it's okay. So at least at present, it seems that the committee will define baseline data sets that are essentially, to be compliant with the standard, you would have to have those, and they would be relatively basic and self-evident that a machine probably should generate them. But then as the machine vendor needs to augment it, there would not be an approval process to do so. There's ways in modern data architectures to basically allow someone to extend the data set without it upsetting anything else anyone else is doing, and it would then go through a review. So the IPC would be aware that it occurred, but the IPC would not be in any position where it would be telling someone not to extend the data from their machine to accommodate a customer.
So, Michael, if it's not going through a committee, then well, where is the decision process going to be made? Is it going to be like a mini committee of, say, 3 people that are going to look at it and make an instant decision, or who makes the decision there?
Well, I can draw from my experience with the IPC 1782. We actually got a new standard which is being published this month, which is the first ever traceability standard. The IPC have basically, the task group, have rocketed through this. I think it's the fastest standard that's ever been made within a year. And, you know, the core team within the task group, and we're made up of, you know, people from all over the industry, some people I've never come across before. There's so much good input into the standards. And this is going to happen again for the Connected Factory Initiative. There will continuously be a lot of people who are very interested in this standard because it drives the whole of manufacturing. This is the enabler for everything else that happens now on the shop floor in a computerized environment. So there is no way that you can take the eye off the ball. There is no way that you can have just a subset of people making decisions. They do need to be made, they do need to be made quickly, but there needs to be this consensus, which is the ideal environment to have the task group such as the one that we have with the Connected Factory Initiative. So it's going to be hard work, but it has to be maintained. We do not want to go down the paths of so many other standards that have come and gone in the past.
Okay. So final question, Jason. How many people have you got on your committee?
It's over 40 now, so it's effectively doubled since Apex. And the input, and I think Michael would probably agree, I hope, is the input from the committee has been really gratifying. And I think it's because of what Michael mentioned, is that the industry has now come to a point where this is no longer a curiosity or something that people will just give lip service to. It is critical to solve this data exchange issue, and you can see it in the work being put in by the committee members and the task groups.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, exciting space, gentlemen. Thank you for bringing us up to date with it, and we'll look forward to the tangible results we're going to see at Apex. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.